Pranam, it's Priyanka Chakraborty and Nisha Bhattacharya. Today, we're bringing you urgent breaking news on the MC Singla Updation case. We have a confirmed listed date for the next hearing at the Supreme Court, but more of that later.
Yes, MC Singla is back at the Supreme Court on Thursday, January 15, before the Honorables Mr. Justice Vikram Nath and Mr. Justice Sandeep Mehta, potentially for final disposal this time, and I will explain why further on in this podcast.
Okay, and if you've been following this, you know it's not just about what the court decides eventually. It's, well, about when they'll even hear it, often the frustrating part.
That's absolutely right. That whole procedural side of things can be a real headache to track, so that's what we're digging into right now.
Okay, so the main event, the big case, is at last in the Supreme Court next week.
But first, cast your mind back to two previous dates in 2025, the December 10 interlocutory hearing that was subsequently adjourned to December 17, but unfortunately the court ran out of time and the Singla case suffered another adjournment.
Recall the Singla case number is SLPC 5561 / 2016. Let's break that down real quick for everyone listening.
SLPC? Special Leave Petition Civil. It's basically how most cases get to the Supreme Court. You're asking for a special permission to appeal, usually after a High Court ruling. SLP is a residual power in the hands of the Supreme Court exercised only in cases when any substantial question of law is involved or there's a risk of gross injustice.
Okay, and the 2016 part tells you what?
That the case has been in the SC system for a long time, and 2026 is coincidentally the decennium since the case was lodged at the Supreme Court.
What's a decennium?
It means a decade, the 10th anniversary.
And its listed status, its classification as a regular listing, is important for what happens next, right?
Yes, that classification is critical and it connects directly to the date, January 15.
January 15, put a pin in that.
But here's the interesting bit, the clue, really. January 15 is a Thursday.
A Thursday? Why does the day of the week matter so much? I wouldn't have thought that's a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal. A Thursday regular listing in the Supreme Court tells you a lot about the importance and potential trajectory of the MC Singla case.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, this takes us behind the scenes into the court's own scheduling rules, the Supreme Court's scheduling black box, let's call it. Explain why Thursday, 15 January is the key here.
Right, it all comes down to a new internal rule introduced by the 53rd Chief Justice Honorable Mr. Justice Surya Kant in December 2025.
The Supreme Court designated December 15, 19, 2025 and January 5, 9, 2026 as miscellaneous weeks. During these periods, the court would hear only urgent and miscellaneous matters, while regular hearing cases will not be listed.
Regular matters like MC Singla, the big beasts, are reserved for final arguments where major points of law are settled.
Okay. So the court's own calendar logic dictates that if this case, being regular, could only be listed from week commencing January 12th, hence the Thursday, January 15th listing.
Contrast this with the previous interlocutory application listings on December 10th and December 17th, 2025, both being Wednesdays.
That's actually a really helpful insight. It gives you, the listener, the procedural background to Supreme Court cases and what to expect from the MC Singla case.
It does, and it also helps manage expectations,
Really? How?
If the case was heard earlier, either during December 15, 19, 2025 or from January 5, 9, 2026, then it would have been listed as miscellaneous, which is more of a procedural step, maybe setting a new adjournment schedule or ruling on the IA application.
Not necessarily the final verdict on the whole pension updation issue itself that PSB bank retirees are clamoring for.
Therefore, the listing on January 15 is going to be a heavy-going, a full arguments day with IBA and the DFS drinking from the last chance saloon barely a second before closing time.
The court scheduling is fascinating in and of itself.
So knowing the difference is key for anyone following the MC Singla case closely.
Definitely adds context. Now, this scheduling rule, where did it come from again? You said it was relatively new.
The shift stems from a December circular issued by Chief Justice J. Shri Surya Kant. It also set out a new listing protocol directing the Supreme Court Registry to prioritize matters involving super senior citizens, E+, persons with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups.
Chief Justice J. Shri Surya Kant explained in an interview on December 29th with CNN 18 that the whole point of this new system was to renew belief in the justice system and to attack pendency, cut down the huge backlog of Supreme Court cases.
Exactly. The aim is to prevent the system from getting clogged and ensure the most vulnerable citizens get timely access to justice. And seniors and super seniors from the PSB and private banking sectors clearly fall within that priority group.
Good clarification. It shows the procedure has, well, outlasted the person who initiated it. Seems like it's embedded now.
And understanding that procedure is frankly just as vital as understanding the legal argument sometimes. It dictates the pace.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Why is this case, MC Singla, such a big deal? Let's talk about the stakes here, the judicial momentum. This isn't just some minor procedural fight.
Oh, absolutely not. At its heart, this is about pension formulas for potentially hundreds of thousands of bank retirees. It's about ensuring their pensions are, updated fairly, reflecting year on year realities like inflation.
So, massive financial implications, equity issues, quality of life challenges, and dignity in old age.
Immense stakes, which explains why there's so much litigation not just in the Supreme Court but across different high courts too. It's a nationwide union issue.
And things seem to have moved pretty quickly in the Supreme Court recently, leading up to this January 15, 2026 date.
Yes, there's been a flurry of activity. The main arguments in the bank pension updation case itself actually finished not long ago, on October 12th last year.
October 12th, that sounds like it should lead straight to a judgment, doesn't it? Arguments are over.
You'd think so, but what happened right after is telling. The judges didn't just reserve judgment, they specifically asked for something:
Which was,
copies of the relevant High Court judgments on similar pension matters.
huh, that's interesting. Why would the Supreme Court need to go back and read all the High Court decisions at this stage? Aren't they just focused on the specific legal points raised in this special leave petitions or SLP?
Well, it suggests they're thinking bigger picture. They might be seeing conflicting decisions coming out of different high courts on these pension issues.
Trying to sort out inconsistencies.
Exactly, they likely wanted to synthesize everything, understand the whole landscape across the country. They're probably aiming for a judgment that sets a clear, unified national precedent, not just deciding the MC Singla case facts in isolation.
Okay, that makes sense. They need the full picture to create a definitive ruling.
Right. Looking for those conflicting judgments to resolve them.
And then, just as things seemed wrapped up, something else happened. Pretty recently, too.
Yes, very recently. Just 5 days after arguments concluded, on October 17th, a completely new appeal popped up in the Supreme Court.
Another one. What's this one about?
This one specifically challenges something called a validation clause.
A validation clause? Okay, what is that in plain English?
Think of it as a legal mechanism often brought in by government or institutions to sort of retroactively approve certain actions, or, more importantly, in the MC Singla case, potentially to limit the impact of an anticipated Supreme Court ruling in favor of bank retirees.
Limit the impact how? Like restricting back pay or something?
Precisely. So imagine the employees win the main case. The court says pensions must be updated. A validation clause might then be used to say, okay, fine, you get the updation, but only going forward from today. If that were to be the case, it could potentially wipe out years of retrospective benefits for bank retirees, especially the super seniors.
Oh, okay. So that's a huge deal. Winning the war but losing half the territory, potentially. A Pyrrhic victory.
That's the concern, yes. So the fact that the petitioners immediately filed this challenge last October to the validation clause shows they're fighting on all fronts, not just for the principle of updation, but for the full financial reality of it, including retrospective updation or remedy.
It's a crucial defensive move then. Shows real urgency.
Absolutely. So you have arguments concluding, the court asking for documentation, this new validation clause challenge filed. It all points to significant momentum building towards January 15.
Which makes January 15, 2026 seem even more significant, even if there are still arguments to be heard on the day.
Definitely one to watch. The key moment now is whether, after the January 15 hearing, the Honorable Justices dispose of the case and reserve judgment. That's the outcome everyone is waiting for.
We'll keep refreshing those court websites. Okay, so the Supreme Court is obviously the main stage here, setting the big precedent. But you mentioned litigation across jurisdictions. There's action elsewhere too.
Yes. We need to widen the lens a bit. There's a parallel track running particularly in the high courts. Let's quickly touch on the Delhi High Court.
Okay, the Delhi High Court update. How does that connect?
Well, it's vital because while the Supreme Court decides the fundamental, if updation is legally required, the high courts often deal with the how, the implementation, the rollout, the specific issues within their region.
So the Delhi High Court case is about the pension revision, but specifically for that jurisdiction.
That's right, it's a related case focusing on implementation there. And like the Supreme Court's new date, we have a January date for Delhi.
Okay. A solid date we can mark down.
Yes. The next hearing in the Delhi High Court for their pension revision matter is officially scheduled for January 2026.
With the MC Singla Supreme Court hearing next Thursday, the LIC case on February 4th, and Delhi High Court sometime in January 2026. It does appear that we're moving towards a perfect storm of court decisions on PSB Bank pension updation.
It does. It signals a definite milestone in the updation litigation track. And it highlights that even if there were delays or procedural steps at the Supreme Court level, the issue is still actively moving forward in key regional courts. And now at the Supreme Court itself,
Gives you a sense of procedural clarity that after a wait of nearly 30 years, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for bank retirees.
and you have to remember what happens in the Delhi High Court, while technically subject to the final SC ruling, can influence how any eventual SC precedent gets applied on the ground locally. These cases matter.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's pull this all together. We've covered quite a bit of ground from Supreme Court scheduling quirks to High Court specifics. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener, trying to make sense of this?
Okay, based on everything we've discussed from the sources, there are really two critical dates, three judicial moments you should be tracking very closely.
First up, the big one, that Supreme Court listing on January 15. And crucially, remember why that date is important. It's a Thursday.
Right, which signals, because of the court's new rules, that it's being treated as a regular matter. So, a potential disposal or reserve judgment is likely on the cards.
A very significant indicator of movement. Okay, date number 2.
Date number 2 isn't firm. The Delhi High Court hearing is slated for its next progress hearing sometime in January 2026.
That's your advisory for tracking the regional implementation side, at least in the Delhi jurisdiction.
Exactly, a marker on the parallel track.
And lastly, the LIC case on February 4th. So, knowing these dates and maybe more importantly, understanding the logic behind that January 15th listing at the Supreme Court, it gives you a much deeper insight, doesn't it?
It really does. And that brings up a final thought. Maybe something for you and our listeners to mull over after listening.
Okay, leave us with something to think about.
Given how complex these big society wide cases like pension updation are, how much does the court's own internal plumbing, like these procedural rules such as dedicating specific days to specific types of cases, how much does that really shape the outcome or at least the timing and visibility of justice?
That's a great question. It suggests that understanding the procedure, the rules of the game inside the court can be just as critical as understanding the legal arguments themselves.
It's often the unseen internal court machinery that dictates the pace of justice.
That is the MC Singla listing breaking news deep dive. Thank you for watching.
We'll definitely keep a close eye on January 15. Meanwhile, please like, comment, subscribe, and share our podcasts on Facebook and other social media platforms.